And what they're basically saying is, listen, guys, we can do all this stuff because we play by a different set of rules than you. The rules of society are not for us, but they are for you. And you need to sit down and shut up and play by the rules, because if you don't, we'll do to you what we did to Donald Trump. All right, so don't take our word for it though. We're going to talk about the Times Magazine article. I know Dustin has mentioned this in the past, like quickly, but it wasn't the point of the podcast for that day. And I decided we probably need to come back to it because it's pretty damning. Like, I mean, it's terrible. Like, I went back through it the other day and I was like, my goodness, like there is zero fear of the media calling each other out, or of the fact checkers, or of people checking anybody. Like, they think they can say whatever they want, or they think that their constituents are so bought into it that they're not going to think for themselves anymore. Like, some of the things that are said in this article, I was like, wait, what? I was like, what did you just say? So if you don't know what I'm talking about, Molly Ball, the Times Magazine, is basically celebrating a rigged election. Now, she likes to change the terminology to, no, not rigged election. We were simply fortifying it for the American people, right? So what she's basically getting to is that big tech, corporations, deep state, all these people came together to make certain that Donald J. Trump was not going to be the president in 2020 because democracy depended upon it. Now, does that sound like democracy to you? Like take the Dominion issues aside, which I don't think you can because there's so many of them. But take the fact that they would not allow it into the courts, all the evidence aside, and we just saw in the last video, when it goes to court, how many lies there are that come up because now someone can actually call them out in their BS. Take all that aside, and let's just focus in on what they have to say, which literally was, we all came together to make sure that Donald J. Trump was not going to win the election. And we succeeded.
And they had to protect us.
Yes, from ourselves.
Our protection.
From our own vote.
Yeah, and in the extreme fringe elements of society that somehow proved to be a majority of the country, but yet we have to, we don't know for ourselves. They know better.
Right, yes.
They know better.
Yes.
And
we just can't see
need
it.
them.
We do need them.
We need them.
Yeah, like a little infant child needs his mother's breast.
But that is for the political left and the more liberal aspects of society, that is more how they think. That's how they look at government as a whole. It's there to protect us, to ensure, and not that it doesn't have some of these functions, but I think we tend to think about it of our governance over the government, our rule by and for the people who then inhabit.
Yeah, we actually have a say in our government.
Yeah. Versus kind of a more elite class from these various aspects of society that come together to rule over
like
us.
all of society prior to America behind us. Like all of it. Like that's how it was structured. And now we're just going right back to it. Like we're like, let's vote that back in, right? Or let's not vote it. Let's just let them decide it, right? And we'll just stay quiet, hush, hush, little sheep, and we'll just, continue to our fields as they burn them down.
Well, but this very much is because the left doesn't have as much appreciation for the arc of history, and to know where
they revise all of history,
where we come from in just West. You could look at all of world history in different forms of this at different levels. It can happen on some sort of basic tribal level for humanity, and it also can be very highly sophisticated like it is now. Yes. Or what we were liberated from, we liberated ourselves from coming out of Europe in the histories of kings and queens and dynasties and monarchies and oligarchies and in the rule of private banks as well over the population, the commercial class, all these people that just held all of the power and influence.
Yeah. Oh, it hasn't just started. It's been going on.
Yeah, this is an age-old thing.
Yeah, for sure. So the goal of the article, literally, I quote, institutions kicked into high gear in order to make sure Trump is not the president to protect our democracy. What do they mean by institutions? Well, you have Hollywood, you have corporations, you have sports, you have social media giants, which were pressured. You have now government, and you have the institutions, which, as Dustin said, they no longer teach history, they teach revisionist history.
Well, I guess you said corporations, but I know that in the article as well, it not only was it companies, but institutions in the business world, because I know the U.S. Chamber of Commerce was mentioned in it, and just the way in which so many institutions across the board really conspired together to.
And what do they all have in common? What do they all have in common?
They hate Donald Trump.
They hate Donald Trump. But why do they hate Donald Trump, right? Because they're all at the top. Like, they're all at the top. Like, all those people I just listed out, they don't want competition. They don't want a middle class. Like, they don't want that. They want you to shut up and sit down. And how do we know that? Well, right after a stolen election, what do we have? We're probably going to get censored. I shouldn't have said that. Right after an allegedly election which was taken from us. We don't believe it was actually stolen. YouTube. We don't believe in a stolen election. YouTube. Not really. But right after that, right, I don't want to get censored, man. But right after that, we had Parler. Right? We had Parler where 10 million people flocked to because we wanted free speech. And Twitter was censoring all the people that they didn't like. And Facebook too. I mean, Project Veritas just got kicked off of Twitter. Like, Project Veritas, one of the best groups out there for getting behind the scene and finding out the truth. But the truth don't align with their narrative. They just kicked them off, so we all flocked to Parler. And what happens? Like you said, they all partner across the top, and they're like, well, we can't have that. They're about to, start competing with us. Crush them. And they crushed them. You had Wall Street. Is it Wall Street Beats? Wall Street Beats. A group of people. They all come together under, what's it called? Reddit. Under Reddit. To kick the Wall Street guys in the you-know-where. And then what happens? They shut them down. Robinhood, deplatformed, get rid of it. And what they're basically saying is, listen, guys, we can do all this stuff because we play by a different set of rules than you. The rules of society are not for us, but they are for you. And you need to sit down and shut up and play by the rules, because if you don't, we'll do to you what we did to Donald Trump. And that is the whole point of what's going on right now. Donald Trump, well, he wasn't a normal guy. He wasn't a middle-class guy, but he was a different kind of guy. He was the apprentice, for God's sakes.
He was a political outsider, for sure.
Yes. And he came on and decided he was going to be the president. And what they're telling you right now is we have big tech people. We have people, corporate elites. We have politicians, and that's not for you. You just stay in the middle class and keep fueling our pockets. And if you talk up, we're going to crush you. And we're actually not going to let you ever arrive at any place in which you don't come to our table and sit down. You don't get to do that. You shut up and sit down on the dirt, and we'll tell you what to do. And most of us in this country, we just go, okay. And sadly, most of the church people in this country say that. All right, I had to get that out of there. Sorry.
Well, and you see that it is just the way in which they have the system in the world that they envision built on their system that they are insisting on. And things had been moving for decades in their direction. And Donald Trump comes along as a major disruption. It's not just his personality. it was his policies that
Yes.
we talk about. It was
Yes.
the economic nationalism. It was the undoing of these horrible trade deals and these other international
Which
agreements.
benefited the top and not the middle class.
Yeah, turned NATO on its head and made all of the allies pay their share there. Got us out of the climate agreement. Got us out of canceled funding for the World Health Organization. All these global things that were happening put in place these trade deals with China that were bringing in billions of dollars in tariffs, but were very much upsetting the whole kind of economic supply chain and the whole process that had been the globalist economics that had been rooted in China, utilizing slave labor and other cheap labor from a communist country to prop up their
Which
economy.
benefits big corporations.
Yeah.
China benefits big corporations. They can afford to have shiploads of containers brought across in huge quantities and get the price for like 2 cents on the dollar when a person over here might be paying 80 cents. And you can never compete with them because they're able to do that. And like Dustin said, on the back of slave labor. On the back of slave labor. They don't care about the fact that the Chinese people are enslaved to their own government. They care about staying at the top and patting their pockets. That's all they care about. They pretend to care so that you will believe them like a gullible person. I almost said that. Gullible.
And so, I mean, there are real consequences for these people. It wasn't simply ideological. It was hitting their pockets in a major way. And so they were desperate to change things. They were desperate to get Trump out.
Yeah.
And like you were just saying, but that reinforces the big point that we're making. It is these institutions and the elite class, not only in the United States, from all over the world, who are conspiring together to bring this outcome about and to reinforce it through the media they control, versus pretty much just in general the population, even those who are deceived by it, whose interests aren't being served by it, but
Not at all.
But that's the only way they can maintain their power, is at least a percentage of the population buying in to their propaganda and the deception of it. But it works against all of our interests. And so those of us who see it, of course, or have been resisting it all along the way, that is the momentum behind Donald Trump and around him. But really, I mean, it predates him, and it will go on past him,
And
because it begins way before even our modern times, and it will go until the end, because ultimately it is a battle of good and evil.
Yes.
And not to say that each side are perfect people, but as far as the general direction and where we believe life and
so
society
what they
should go.
do at the top is they try to serve. We always like to talk about the black community and the welfare. Lyndon B. Johnson that set up the welfare system to have them voting Democrat forever. We like to talk about that, but they do that more than just there, right? I mean, you think about teachers, right? There's a lot of teachers. I'm not saying all teachers are liberal, but most teachers are, because they found a way to satisfy the teacher's desire. Right? So you're an entrepreneur, I'm an entrepreneur. We're never going to be satisfied with this system because our personalities are entrepreneur personalities. We want to work hard. We want to achieve better. We want to grow. And we see all the things that are being pressed down upon us, the ceiling that they have set for us, because they don't want us to grow. We see those ceilings. Whereas like a teacher doesn't see the ceiling because they're satisfied in what they're given their $60,000 in their insane retirement for the rest of their life after X amount of years, and they're okay with that.
Or
They're
what
satisfied.
happens is the ones that aren't, the ones that can't be satisfied with that, the ones even that really care about, go into it, and they really care about children, their future, their education, but they get so oppressed in the system, frustrated by the bureaucracy of all the hoops they got to jump through, and they're no longer
because they're
really
outnumbered. They can't be hushed.
And so that pushes the teachers out who are more free and independent thinkers, who really care. They get so frustrated and they just go, into the private sector, or they just, whatever it is, they get out of education. And so they retain.
Coach Hayes. Sorry.
They retain the ones who are willing to just, for the most part, this is not absolute, but they retain the ones who would just go along with it, who would be contented the way that you described. And
so it slowly evolves into a worsening teacher situation, because you end up not having teachers that actually care about the kids. You have teachers that are satisfied with a paycheck and with a retirement, and they're just going through the motions. And I'm not saying this is all teachers, but it's a lot of our schools nowadays. They're going through the motions because, hey, I'm okay. I make my money. I'm secure. I got my safety net. I got tenure. I'm just good with it.
This is how you succeed in society, is by following the rules and go along. So that's what we're teaching these kids, and they need to take this test and pass it so they can move on and move to the next thing and have this credential. And they're going to make their way, and it's training a bunch of robot followers throughout the whole system, the people in society. So you just see in that just how it kind of perpetuates itself. And it's so disheartening, not only to the teacher, the true teachers who have that spirit, but also the students.
Yeah.
And why so many students just aren't
I taught
content.
for a year. And that's not the only reason I don't teach anymore. I was probably going to get fired with it. I had to back out of teaching for a while because I couldn't put up with the fact that
all those same reasons.
That the kids rule the school and that teachers are handcuffed, right? That's one of the problems, because some of the kids we need to go back to paddling, but that's another subject. But one of the reasons was all the absurd testing that they have to go through instead of learning, right? We're literally teaching for test. And I'm like, how stupid is this? We're not even learning what we need to learn anymore, because we're teaching to pass a stupid test that the federal government tells us we have to pass, or the state, or whatever. And so you're not even trying to learn. The teachers are trying to keep a job because they need them to pass the test so they can keep their job. And I'm like, that's not teaching. That's terrible. So that's why we're becoming dumber and dumber in our population, because even DC's controlling that, right? They're controlling what we do and do not learn, because they're conditioning us to what they want us to learn and what they don't want us to learn. They don't want us to be able to think for ourselves.
And that perpetuates the system that conspired together to change the outcome of the election. What would naturally happen if people were to vote in their conscience based on what is in their interest? They couldn't let that happen, because that would actually ruin their system and how it supports them at the top. They need to be training all these followers, all of these workers, to help maintain their system, keep those workers at the bottom, keep them at the top. But here along comes Donald Trump and this movement around him that totally upends that, and in 4 years dismantles it almost entirely. There's obviously some big pillars left, and plenty of the people there. This is the swamp. And it's not just in DC. It is, and this is the deep state that is pervasive throughout these institutions. And this is what people need to see. And this is what we're talking about. And it seems so outlandish that how could a conspiracy at this level be carried out and be successful? There's no way. There is a way, because it's so deep down into the way of thinking and in the way our society has been structured to work. And these institutions and kind of the levers of control that they operate, from the media to the social influence. And like we were saying, if you want to succeed in this system, then you can't speak out. You need to go along to get along. And so and if you see it and say it like we do, you're either paranoid or you're a conspiracy theorist. That's what they do. That's their reaction to it. That's their fallback. Like, everybody that sees it and says it, that's what they hit us with, right? I'm a little paranoid that fascism and a socialist model has taken over our country and is ruining the opportunity for society and my children to have an opportunity. They are our theory is that these people are conspiring together to subvert the will of the people.
I think we're almost out of the realm of theory. Like, we almost have arrived at reality.
Well, a lot of supporting evidence
Yes.
is substantiating
Yeah.
this wild conspiracy
Which
theory
brings us
that we
into
put
our
forth.
goal, right? So I don't know how we got on their goal, on all that, because I was supposed to follow up with the how they accomplished it, but we went to all that. But how? So the how, right? So they pressured major social media outlets, right? So they suppressed opinions on the outlets. For instance, like a newspaper article that broke from the New York Post of Joe Biden's son and his dirty dealings and his computer that had explicit content, to say the least, on it. They suppressed it. Why do you think they suppressed it? Because they remember 2016 and Clinton's emails. They remember all that and how that had a major impact on the election. So, hey, listen, y'all just need to cut that. Yeah, just go ahead and censor the post. Yeah, but they didn't do anything wrong. It doesn't matter. Just censor them. The people will make up a story. Just censor their article.
I mean, you couldn't even share the link
No.
on social media without
No.
it being taking the post down.
And it turns out it was true. But it didn't matter after November the 4th, right? They didn't care and this is not the only thing. There's been a lot of things, like the Lincoln Project. Holy cow, one of the founders is literally sleeping with little boys, right? Go back and look before November the 4th. All the people that supported the Lincoln Project, did they know about it? Probably. Did they care? No. Because it supported their narrative and it would hurt Donald J. Trump in the election. They didn't care that a man was molesting little boys. At the best, they just looked the other way. At worst, they knew about it and didn't care because it still got them their narrative. And it got them the completion of their goal, which was for Donald J. Trump to lose. But they can justify it all in democracy matters. Right? I mean, God. Anyways. Next, downplaying traffic to certain videos. Steven Crowder on Facebook had the largest live stream ever on election night. Ever. He was larger than Fox News, I'm pretty sure. I'm almost certain. They cut his feed. They cut his feed on election night. He's suing them right now for that too, and I hope he takes them down. If you want to go short a stock, short Facebook. I think he's going to win that one. But then you brought up too, COVID and all the endless possibilities that COVID presented for this fascist takeover. For one, universal mail-in voting, which now, is it Jeff Bezos' Amazon? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Jeff Bezos is saying, we can't do that in Alabama over the union meeting. There might be fraud. Like, no, there's no mail-in voting. You have to vote in person. We need to verify your ID. There's no mail-in voting for Amazon, only on a national election where my self-interest, as Dustin said, are being supported by the other side. Then we'll have mail-in voting, but not for my company. No, 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 no. Ballot harvesting. That was another big one. Changing state laws. Literally. Changing the laws.
Unconstitutionally. Because the laws, the regulations around each state's voting process must be approved, voted on by the state legislature.
Yes.
But in many cases, it was
not
changed by governors,
yes.
Supreme Court rulings, all these various things the change being brought about by lobbying efforts from corporate America, including Facebook, and Mark Zuckerberg dumping in hundreds of millions of dollars.
Which is
all over the
why
country.
Texas filed their lawsuit, and they didn't have standing, so the Supreme Court said they couldn't file it. But they were literally complaining about Pennsylvania changed their laws. Michigan changed their laws. Wisconsin changed their laws. Georgia changed their laws. It's going to affect Texas. Like, this outcome is going to affect us more than anybody because Biden's going to open up our border and just let everybody flood into it. Yeah. Dang it, I have standing. Let me come up here and make my case, right? So anyways, there's that. And then finally, signature. Here's the Georgia one I was going to bring up. No signature verification. We still don't have signature verification in Georgia. Everything they told us that we were going to get, they lied to you. They never did it because they're expecting you just to shut up.
When people say that, well, it's your Republican governor and your Republican Secretary of State who
we don't like them either.
Things. That's many of these institutions, and especially many government officials, they just as much as liberal and Democrat individuals they conspired together to keep Donald Trump out.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's not a Republican Democrat thing. That is very much the point
You
that
would,
we're making.
if you were doing this, you would want people on both sides, because it would become too obvious if they were all on one side of the line, right? That's not how you couldn't pull it off.
Well,
you need people on both sides, but they're predominantly on the left. But there's many on the right as well.
True, and ideologically,
Yes.
it's more driven from the left, but that just shows how corrupt our institutions and the whole society that we're in. Because, especially in Georgia, people know that they're not going to succeed politically, or you have a much reduced chance, especially in certain parts of the state, if you're running as a Democrat. So even if you believe that, even if those are your ideals, you know that you can't succeed. You can't get in a position of power and influence, if that's your desire, by being a Democrat. So they run as Republicans, and they can lie with the best of them and put on a show.
That's what it means to be a politician.
And pander to, their evangelical base or whoever it is that they think is going to get them elected. And unfortunately, too many Christians and other conservatives
was their guy.
are gullible enough to receive it.
Even the Catholic faith.
Yeah, well... Even aside from that, though, you have a lot of people who don't see the other wolves in sheep's clothing.
Sure.
Wolves in sheep's clothing here. So Joe Biden, that's one thing. But Brad Raffensperger, who's a liberal in conservative clothing.
Yeah, he's a Mormon.
Yeah, people like that who are just
more
dangerous to the whole thing.
Yeah.
But
the most dangerous, I would argue.
Yeah, because on the surface, people are then going to point to them. So
like Eric Swalwell.
Even Republicans are going along with it. You must be wrong, because even Republicans
Eric Swalwell should not be dangerous. He's banging Chinese spies, right? He should not be dangerous. We all ought to look at him and go, this man is a buffoon, right? Now leave it to the Democrats to put him at front row and center in an impeachment trial after all that comes out.
Or on the House Intelligence Committee.
Yeah, on the House Intelligence. He might have some Chinese intelligence. He's been hanging out with them, you know what I mean? Anyways, and I want to bring this up on the signatures real quick, though. So today, there's a process, you might know more about it. There's a process unfolding out in California where they're trying to sign petitions to Gavin Newsom to have a re-election. Is that what it is?
Recall.
So does that mean you get to
I guess vote again for a new governor ahead of the election.
Okay, ahead of the
next scheduled election.
So you can't make this stuff up. Like, this is so hysterical, you can't make it up. Gavin Newsom has asked for a signature verification on the petitions because he doesn't think that they're all real. And I'm like, you cannot make this stuff up. Like, it is so hilarious. And we just sit back and take it. We just take it. We just take it. I'm like, you can't make it up. I'm like, come on, people. I'm like, Gavin Newsom literally 3 months ago was like, no, we don't need, trust the process. Now, hey, we need some verification here, right? We need some verification. You have it happening. Amazon, same thing. So it's just, it's frustrating, to say the least.
Well, hopefully the absurdity of all of these things serves to wake people up. However slow that process. Well, it's either going to do two things, maybe three things. If you already see it, then of course it just infuriates you. But if you don't see it, then hopefully it serves to wake people up. The hypocrisy of it, the double standard. I think for many people, slowly but surely, that is part of what's happening. And why in God's economy, or in even a kind of intentional plan to save our nation here, it serves a good purpose to let the people see, not put it on display, and have it not be able to operate behind the curtain in the shadows anymore, so that people can see it for what it is. and then consciously, actively choose differently. Align themselves with the side who imperfectly but genuinely, faithfully is fighting for truth. The third thing, though, would happen is the people who buy into this stuff, who like it, who it serves their worldview and their ideological agenda, they're hardened, increasingly hardened and hardened to it all. They don't care about the lie. They don't care about the hypocrisy. These many people, as you see from this Times article, they know that they are acting deceptively, and they know that they are depriving the people of their democratic voice in the process. They know exactly. The news knows they are lying to you day in and day out, but it justifies the world that they are trying to create. So they don't care, and that's a part of a liberal mindset or a leftist kind of way of thinking. Not that all people think this way, but it's intrinsic to that you don't actually care about the truth. You just want what you want. And truth be damned, whatever you have to do to get the outcome. And that's the reason why socialists are so effective at infiltrating the system, because they don't mind to lie. It's just simply a tactic that helps them achieve the greater victory.
Yeah.
So along the way, we're being lied to, and they're totally fine with it.
And they're
being hardened in that.
Yes.
And what, in the end, they're willing to take increasingly bold steps to cement their power and control over the system. And then that is going to heighten the conflict, the potential conflict that is on the horizon in one form or another. So hopefully, in the meantime, more and more people are just waking up to this reality, so the masses can truly stand in a more unified voice and resist these things and kind of flush it out of our system through a democratic process. But we're going to have to unify enough to see how empowered they are over us, and how they have done these very things by changing the democratic process along the way, because they know it's crucial that they control our electoral system to keep themselves in power.
Well, and what worries me is, I don't know, surely to God we've reached the climax of obvious. Like, if we're in a bell curve here, I'm like, if we're not unified now, we got to start dropping at some point, because can it be any more obvious? Can anything else come out to make it? I don't know where else it would have to come out. I mean, it has become so obvious that these people are aligned at the top over the last 3 to 4 months. Really, like you said, over the last 4 years, but really climaxing these last 3 to 4 months to where they don't even care. They think their constituents are idiots. They don't think you're gullible. I think you're gullible. They think you're stupid, right? So we are compassionate. They are not. They think you're stupid, okay? That it's climaxed. I'm like, it's got to come down the other side at some point. We got to be at the top. Like, I don't know how we're not at the top.
Well, the difference is, we do care about people.
Yeah.
We're frustrated because people are deceived and they're actively working against their own interest, and they think that we're the deceived ones. But we care about you. We care about the people who are like us in the future of our country being led astray. Those people at the top, they do not care.
No.
That's the reason they are willing to lie to you.
That's the story of history. That's always been the story of history. They don't care. You're a slave to them. They make you think you're free, but you're not. And it's because you're not. I'm a business owner. He's a business owner. There is a ceiling to which you can't achieve unless they say it's okay. We're getting there. There's still some people that break through that ceiling, but they continue to pad that ceiling as much as possible. And in certain areas, it's already been set, right? I mean, in certain areas, there is a ceiling. You're not getting there. The banking system, don't you think so? Cars, really, even some people might go, well, Tesla, yeah, okay, whatever, we can have that debate, right? There's certain infrastructures and institutions that you're not gonna achieve in that area because they've already set that ceiling.
Well, and it's been that way for a long time, and so just the point you were making about how much more obvious does it need to be? Well, for there for decades, even centuries along the way in the development of, again, Western civilization, the economies that are part of, there's philosophy, there's a battle of ideas, and there have been voices and philosophies that have, came and went, but some of the ones that have persevered is the Christian outlook and worldview. And one of the things that Christianity, from a more kind of prophetic perspective, is able to do is to look into society and see, because, like we talk about, there are valid, truthful principles, and you don't have to be a Christian necessarily, but just one of the vantage points that one can have that is rooted in truth and principled approach to organizing society. So people can see these things, they can see the trajectory of society, and they can say, this is not going to turn out well. Yeah, we're going down a wrong path. These institutions that we depended on for the strength of our society, they've been corrupted, and we're going down a path. And eventually it breaks down, and the whole system falls apart, and people suffer by it. But then we work ourselves, we have a new start in that, and we move forward. And so you see that through history.
Sometimes the new start's not so pleasant, though.
Yeah, no, you suffer a lot. It's not always immediately a better outcome. But my point is that this is not anything new necessarily. And so even for decades, people have been pointing to these same kinds of things and saying, this is the direction we're going. And so all of this is not a surprise to many of those people, but those are the people who have, for decades, been on the fringes and been ostracized as,
paranoid or conspiracy
and all
theories.
these things. But they've just simply been proven more and more and more right. And so but along the way, more and more people are wake up. So yeah, a lot has happened in the last 4 years and even in the last 4 months that has awakened even more people. But yet, it can go farther, and I think it will, because it has to. But too, I think there's a lot of evidences around these things that we kind of see there.
Well, you said you
things,
think
but
they
they
did
need
this.
to emerge more so out into the open, so that people see definitely that all these things really did happen around the election or around what. Any of these other events.
And you made the point that you think this article was more about getting out in front of it.
Yeah, right? You can look at it two different ways.
Knowing that could be a kind of a tactic. Like, let's get out in front of these things, because if we get out in front of them and we present how you ought to see these things, because we got out in front of it, maybe you'll see these things that way. Because if you start to see these things pop up and we haven't talked about them, then people might start thinking free for themselves. But God forbid.
If they don't have a narrative,
we need to tell them how to think about this, because God forbid they try to think for themselves. We can't have that.
Yeah. So one way is thinking, they're so arrogant. In their arrogance, they're telling you what they've done, and they just think that you won't even be able to do anything about it. Maybe. I think there is a degree of truth to that.
Absolutely.
But then the other is like, they know, and there's. Because they
see it too. They're not blind to it.
They're desperate
They're just not
to keep
telling
this
you
from
about
coming out. So they are trying to get out in front of it and develop their narrative that includes these things, so that they can steer you in that direction. We had to do it for your own good.
And that's how obvious it is. That they feel like they have to include it in their narrative. Like, they would rather not include any of this, but they know they have to, because it's becoming so obvious. So we will see more to come.